Hey everyone, Jamie here from technicalcafe.com. Welcome to your 22nd HTML tutorial. In the last tutorial we talked about creating frames in HTML and how we can use them to display multiple web pages within the same browser window. So in this tutorial we're going to be talking about something a little bit on the similar side but yet a little bit on the different side as well, and that's iframes. So what iframes allow you to do in HTML is to display multiple web pages within the same window. However, iframes are actually embedded within another website. So instead of displaying just multiple web pages side by side like you can do in frames, iframes allow you to display them with a web page within a web page like we see in this web page here. So here's the example web page that I set up here. We have two iframes actually. One is set to have a source of w3schools.com and it's actually going to the HTML iframes page, which I'll link up in the description below. And this is just an iframe. It's the default size, so it's a little small, so sorry about that. And it's actually linking to this page right here. Anyway, this is another iframe down here that we have, and this is actually empty. It has no source. But what we did do is I actually set the target of this Technical Cafe link to open in this iframe here. So the Technical Cafe blog opens up down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to create the code that actually causes these two iframes to appear here. So let's get into it. Okay, so here's the code that we have for our iframes. It's just a regular, let's go over here. We have some HTML regular code here that we have up at the top, head, title. And unlike in the previous tutorial where we had, we couldn't use the body tag with the frame set tag, otherwise it wouldn't display properly. With iframes you're actually allowed to use the body tag. And that's basically because the iframe is actually embedded within the body of another web page. So these two iframes are embedded within this web page here, so we could actually move these over and whatnot, and maybe even put them in a div and style it whatever way we want to. But so we are allowed to use the body tag. That's just maybe one of the key differences you could say between frames and iframes. Anyway, so let's come down here. We have each one just where we have the text over here displaying our iframes, just so we know what it's about. And here's actually the code for our first iframe. So this code right here represents this. So it's just iframes are composed of two tags, like a table or maybe a frame set or a form, and it has an opening iframe tag and a closing iframe tag. And actually we have nothing between the two tags. These are empty right here, so we don't need to worry about putting anything there. And the second iframe that we have is just an empty iframe. There's no source like we have in the first iframe up here. Second iframe has no source down here, but we do have a name attribute unlike up here, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So now let's just delete this and let's get into coding our iframes. We'll save that out, come over here and refresh, and our canvas here is empty. Just one thing I want to note, that if you watch the previous tutorial on regular frames, you'll notice that sometimes we have to come over here and rerun the code to launch it again in Firefox, and that's also true for iframes. I'm not sure why, but sometimes if we created a new iframe and left it empty, the previous whatever was in it previously would show up. I'm not sure why that is. But you might see that a little bit in this tutorial. So now let's go about creating our web page. We'll create a basic HTML here, basic shell, I guess you could say, and we'll create our head, create a title, and within this title we're just going to call it HTML iframes. We'll save it out, come over and refresh, and here we go, and we'll create our body. /body. Okay, so basically within the body tags is where we're going to create our iframe, unlike with the other frames that we learned about previously. If you haven't watched that tutorial, you might want to check it out, just so you know the difference. So the tags, actually first before we create our iframe, let's just create an h1, just so we can have some text on our page here, and we'll say HTML iframes. HTML iframes. Okay, so we'll save that, come over here and refresh, and here's our HTML iframes text. So underneath this we'll create our first iframe, and that's going to be the iframe that we're going to be displaying the W3 schools link in. So let's just, in order to create it, we need a set of tags, an opening and a closing tag, and we're just going to be using the iframe tag. It's iframe. So now that we've actually created our iframe tag, we should be able to see the empty iframe within the HTML page here. So let's just save that, and we'll come over here and refresh, and you'll notice that, like I said earlier, even though it's empty, there's no code within here. it's still taking on whatever was in it before, and we had the W3 Schools website up in here before. So let's just take a look at the page source, and even though it is empty, it's still displaying that. So let's just come over here. We click on Run in Notepad++. If you're not using Notepad++, you can just open up the web page or visit the URL or something like that from your browser. So we'll launch it again in Firefox. Okay. And just delete the old one. So now that our iframe is empty, you can see our page source, the iframe is empty. So we have an empty iframe. There's nothing in here. So let's put something in it. And in order to put something in it, like with an image, for example, we just say src equals and then some quotation marks. And whatever is in the source between the quotation marks is going to be what's going to open up in the iframe here. So for this one, just like in the previous frame, and also links, we can actually include web pages that are not online, I guess you could say, web pages within directories that are on our computer or on our server. So if you watch the div tutorial that we did previously, let's just load up that in an iframe. So we'll say /divs.html, and that's just gonna, this means the same directory. We can actually just do divs.html, save it, come over and refresh, or better yet, we can just run it and launch it again. You'll notice that our div web page that we did for the tutorial is actually up in here in our iframe. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the HTML iframes page, and we're going to throw that in there just to keep it with our sample page that we had at the beginning. So you can do both pages that are on the server and URLs. So we're just going to include this URL here. So we'll save, run, and relaunch. And here's our W3 Schools. And I just like it at the left here to keep things organized. Okay, so let's go back to our code here, and we're going to create a second iframe. But first, we're going to put some line breaks in. And then we're going to put a paragraph where we're going to say, let's open, or we'll say, link to an iframe. So we'll save that, come over here, and we'll refresh. And we're going to put an iframe down here. Actually, let's change that to open a link, hyperlink in an iframe. Not hyperline, hyperlink. Okay, that's a little bit better. It's more descriptive to what we're doing. So let's just create a new iframe under this. We'll say iframe, and we're going to save that. Come over here and refresh. And here's our empty iframe. So what we want to do is we want to create a link, and we'll just put the link under this iframe here. And we want that link to have a target of this iframe. So when we click on the link, instead of opening in a new tab or a new browser window, it'll just open up within this iframe here. So what we can do for that is we'll just we'll give this iframe a name. In the name of this iframe, it's going to be whatever you want it to be. You can set it to whatever you want. So this name is going to be, we'll say, we'll just call this iframe 2. It says we're going to open it in the second iframe that we have on our page here. So we'll call this iframe 2, and we'll create a link. So href equals and /a, and within our link here, we're just going to say technicalcafe.com to keep with the tutorial, and maybe show off the site a little bit. And we'll say technicalcafe.com. So we'll save and refresh. And let's just get that down a little bit. Okay, so now we bumped it down to the next line here. So when we click on Technical Cafe, it should load. Okay, yeah, so it should load right up here in this page, and it does. So instead of that, what we don't want is we don't want it to open up in a new page or new tab. We want it to load in the iframe. So how we're going to do that is that we're going to actually give the iframe a name, which we did, and then we're going to basically tell the link to have a target of this name. So we'll say target equals, and then we're going to give it some quotation marks. And if you remember from the links tutorial, we can have a target to open, like for example, target _ blank will cause it to open up in a new tab, and no target will cause it to open up in a new window. So if we have a target of the name of the iframe, iframe 2, it'll open up in this iframe's name. And the iframe obviously supports the name attribute. So if we save this, and we take a look at our link, ahref equals technicalcafe.com, target equals iframe 2, or whatever you called your iframe, and then we have the name of the link, obviously. So let's refresh, and we come over here and we click on the link. It should open up within this iframe, and it does. So we can go around and check on that and see that within our iframe. So now that we have our two iframes up and running and working properly, let's learn some attributes of the iframes. If you'll notice right here that these iframes actually have borders right along the edges here, and there's actually a way we can turn that off or disable the border. And within that setting, it's just another attribute, so we'll just put it within our beginning or opening iframe tag. And the attribute that we're going to be using to get rid of the border is frame border equals, and then some quotation marks, and you just set it to 0. And when you set it to 0, it'll actually remove the border right from the iframe. So here you can see that we do have a border, and here you can see we don't. So that's just a little something if you're using iframes and you don't want a border, or maybe you want to set like a custom border using CSS or something, include it in a div, whatever you want to do. So we'll just take that off for right now, and we'll get rid of that. And actually, I'm just going to put a little closing tag here that we don't need it. Actually, that's not. We can't have that there. I was thinking more of toward the frames where we had the frame as one tag. So we'll just save that out and refresh, and there we go. So everything's working. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually change the height and width of the iframes, because now they are a little small. You can't really see much. So what we're going to do there is we're just going to use the height and width attributes, similar to how we might have in an image. So we'll say height equals, and we'll call it, let's say 500 pixels. And you can also use percentages with this as well. So width equals, and we'll say 500 pixels. So if we come over here and save, you'll notice that our iframe is bigger and it allows more room to see everything within our web page here. So basically you can make it whatever size you want. If you want it to scroll across the side here, we can set the height maybe to 300 pixels and the width to 800 pixels. Come over here and refresh, and we have an iframe that you can see more vertically, horizontally rather than you can vertically, in our default size iframe. So feel free to play around with those settings, and also feel free to check out the iframe page that we have linked up in here. I'll add it in the description, and this is where you can find a lot more information about the iframes, and a little bit more information about HTML as well, if you're interested. So I'll link this up in the description. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to leave them below. And if you have any tutorial ideas or anything you want to see, please feel free to also leave me a comment in the comment section below. Or you can also use the contact section of the Technical Cafe blog, where you can be able to just send me an email. Or you can contact me or follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/jamiemcg if you're interested in what I'm up to. Or you can follow Technical Cafe at twitter.com/technicalcafe. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.